Okay, we're getting there. So I'm glad to have that because I know Brenda has been all over this thing, and so she knows all the answers. So I was going to, relying
About
on
the Buffalo
her.
Compassion Fund?
Yeah.
Well, depending on what you're asking.
Well, I know you know a lot. You probably know a lot too.
I might, and I might not. It just
Yeah.
depends on what you're asking.
Well, and that's why I looked it up just to see. Because there's a basic thing, and it's more just so that it's not that I have a lot of specific questions, but just to get people thinking about like do they have questions? What are they wondering about? Either if they're either giving money or hoping to get money or
Right.
what. Right.
I could see it in the camera.
Okay.
I was just moving my
Are you
water out
ready
of
to
that
start?
picture.
Yeah, right. Yep, we're ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Yep, we have our water, I'm turning my phone off, that's one thing. So that nothing's ringing or something.
Oh, the wrong way.
That's what I do. I
Yeah.
do it every time.
I want to be in the middle.
Exactly. So that's great. Thank you, Richard. You got it beautifully set up. We've got our yellow and green. We're all happy.
All right.
Okay, so we're ready whenever you are.
Okay, flip the switch that says on the air.
Right, of course.
And put the clapper in front of your face. When you hit the clapper, you're on the air.
Thank you. Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center, being produced here at Think Twice Radio in the home of the future. Thanks to our friend Richard Wicca and producer. Thanks, Richard. And we thank our friends at WBNY, Buffalo's original alternative radio station, 91.3 FM. Thank you, Buff State. Thank you, WBNY. And when I think of thankfulness, I do often think of our indigenous friends. I think about the fact that we are on Haudenosaunee land here where we're recording and where most of the listeners will be. It's originally Seneca land, stolen through attempted massacre, attempted genocide and a lot of violence and trickery. And yet, even though people got on smaller and smaller pieces of land, that thankfulness is still very, very central to their being. And what they start every event with a thankfulness address, Thanksgiving address, which remembers all the people who made this gathering possible, and Mother Earth, and all the living waters, the waters that keep us alive, that give us so much beauty and life itself, and all of the plants, the medicinal and the nutritional plants of all kinds, the trees giving us the wonderful air and the beauty, and holding our earth together, and the creatures, the flying, swimming, and
Calling.
and four-legged, and all the calling, especially the calling, yes, thank you, calling creatures, and the head bird being the eagle, and anyway, and then, of course, there's the different elements, the mountains, the thunder beings, the sky world, and especially the love that brings us all together, and the Creator, who gave us the original instructions that we should follow so that life will continue in this creation. So then they would say Nyahweh, which means that thankfulness, and then the people would say Nyo. So, Fragrance, if you would say Nyo.
Nyo? What does that mean?
It means agreed.
Okay.
Agreed, and would mean also especially, and now our minds are one.
Okay.
Yeah, and now our minds are one. So I'm very happy. I'm so happy to have you here, Fragrance. It's just great. So I want to say, first, we have a very important topic, and we may go a little off topic, but we're starting off with talking about TOPS employees and survivors of the massacre, and sort of what's going on locally and then just, we'll specially talk with our special guest, Fragrance of Yah, Harris Stanfield. Welcome, Fragrance.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're so grateful that you're here. Thank you for coming. I will mention that we're even more grateful that we have one of your daughters here with us in the room, not
Yes.
participating, but we're just all here, and now our minds are one.
Yes.
So, and it's just always so great to see you. I want to say, you give so much to the community in so many ways, and that's been especially true after this terrible massacre. And I'll never forget having you speak at the March for Our Lives. What a great gift that was, and how very moving it was for the people there. Certainly to me.
Yeah.
And yeah. So what we usually start off with is just sort of what are the values we want to uphold in the conversation or in the issue, or the topic. So what would be a value or a couple values that you want us to think about when we think about the survivors surviving this massacre?
Some values.
Yeah.
Compassion. Understanding, and acknowledgement and consideration.
Compassion, understanding, acknowledgement, and consideration. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, compassion, of course, so important. So important. And I think that you have shown a lot of compassion yourself, in the way that you are dealing with this, in the way you treat other people, and the way you're, as I said, really serving the community, including musically as well as otherwise, to give people, more strength to go on.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
well, music is a big thing in our lives. So, and the compassion and certainly understanding, and I think we all need a deeper understanding of trauma, of ourselves, of how to go on, and then acknowledgement and consideration. So acknowledgement, that's one of the things that's in this little mini Gnonio that I just did, is that they always want to acknowledge salutations and thanksgiving for this and for that. So the acknowledgement. That's why I acknowledged your daughter, even though
Yes,
she's not
even though
gonna-
she's not going to speak. Yeah.
Right,
Because
right.
she's still in the room.
Right, she's still in the room, right,
Yeah.
and now our minds are one.
Yes.
So I will just, I think I want to, lately, I talk about truth and love a lot, because Dr. King said, unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. And I want to say from his lips to God's ears. But I also like to think of, I'm going to hold up the values of the ones that Cornel West said, if we have these, we'll be able to do what we need to do. So tonight I am thinking so much about moral integrity and universal solidarity. And so those are also values that come up a lot, in terms of, knowing what we need to do as a community and doing it, having the integrity to really do that in a thoughtful way that has, as you say, the compassion, the acknowledgement, and then and the solidarity, same thing, because the solidarity is right next to that love, of just caring and compassion, So thanks for that. So how has it been since these past weeks, in terms of what kind of supports have you or other, first of all, for those who don't know, I need to say that you were at the massacre and you've told your story, what it was like to be in the store, and your daughter was in the store with you, not the daughter who's here right now. What a terrifying and really, of course, hugely, it's traumatic for the people who weren't there.
Right.
Right? So, of course, for the people who were there, it's just just so huge. So, what has been happening? How has TOPS and the community tried to help you and other people in your position, and how's all of that going? If you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Just in the last 2 months. TOPS has provided services for the employees. So that's why I always like to separate when we're talking about survivors. I can't speak as a survivor who is a non-employee,
Right.
because I'm an employee.
Right.
So there is a difference.
Sure.
I always like to also just put a disclaimer. We know that TOPS did not do this.
Right.
Because
Absolutely.
I hear a lot of things directed at TOPS that are not so positive and not so supportive or encouraging. And it's not just that it's my job and I'm a slave to the corporation or anything of that nature, but just, again, acknowledgement and consideration that the TOPS Corporation did not do this. They do not condone anything of this nature, and they are also very deeply saddened, and they are impacted by what happened.
Right.
So I just want to say that first. And TOPS has done, I think, a very decent and considerate job of taking care of their employees, the employees of 250, and not just for those of us who were present during the massacre, but also for those who were not present.
Right.
It did affect all of us in some ways, some directly and some indirectly. I must say we all have been treated exactly the same, which to me personally, and I don't speak out about that too much because I don't want to offend or make anyone feel like what they're feeling is less than.
Sure.
Or, I don't really like to compare pain and hurt and trauma.
Right.
So it's not a competition. But just in general, being directly impacted is different. And I think there should be some difference in the way that we deal with people.
Right.
And not just for TOPS, but for the community, for the city, for the state, and on every level. For those of us who were present at the massacre, we are the directly impacted individuals.
Right.
We're the first level of directly impacted individuals.
Right.
For those of us who are employees, we were the targeted, directly impacted individuals. All customers were not targeted because, of course, no one would know when they're going to be there. We, on the other hand, are scheduled to be there, so it's a little different. We have a pattern. We have a routine of when we're going to be working. So I just feel that there was a more direct attack on us because I'm scheduled to be there every Saturday.
Well, and also you were there. You were there.
Yeah,
So
and-
the difference between being I might have been there,
Right.
and a lot of people have that, even non-employees. Like I was gonna go, but I went and did
I was
this.
on my way,
You hear
but-
all these, and there's been many of them.
Or they even,
mentioned.
I just left, and
Right,
I was
absolutely.
I just got home, or
I go there all the time. Or,
Right.
I mean, so but that is a different thing than being there, seeing a shooter, or hearing the shots, or whatever.
and having to do something. Like, in order for
Right.
me to be here today,
Right.
to be breathing right now, to be sitting in front of you and have the opportunity to be on this show, I had to act. And for a number of people who feel the same, they may feel the same as I do. They may be just as deeply impacted mentally and traumatically as I am, because we can't judge
Right.
how that's going to affect someone.
Sure.
So that's why I say I'm never comparing or contrasting how we feel, right? Because you could feel just as deeply as I do. You could be just as traumatized as I am, even though you weren't there. So that can happen, and I understand that. But the difference is I had to act. So because of that, so my memory is still there. I was actually there. I have a memory of being there. I have a memory of what actions had to be taken. I have a memory of the sounds. I have a memory of the smells. I have a memoy of what I saw. I have a
Right.
memory of the hormones that went through my body.
Right.
You know, all of those things that I went through,
Right.
that I have that, you know, that
Right.
memory of that situation, and anyone who was present is going to have that. So that is a different experience, and I think that needs to be acknowledged.
Absolutely, and I think that, I'm going to say, as a qualified clinical social worker, I think that anyone will say, even though we can't judge pain and there's all kinds of other, first of all, this is not the only trauma. We have 400 years of trauma we
Right,
can talk
right,
about,
right.
and then we have all kinds of other trauma, and we have a highly there's not just trauma, then there's our broken alert systems, which people have for trauma, shame being the subtle trauma, or stress. And so all those things, it's about a broken alert system. But to actually be present or have people shooting at you or about to shoot at you, and I have to say, the difference for people who are black and who are not black is also a different experience.
Exactly.
It's a different experience because when you're there and he's aiming for you.
Exactly.
And you know he's right there. You see it on his gun or you heard afterwards.
Right.
But it's a known factor that he was aiming for you
Yeah.
and for other people of color in the store.
Yeah.
And then to actually, the other thing is that what you said, I love what you said about, all the different ways that you experienced it and re-experience it sometimes, because I just heard somebody, Coach Mike with the City Swimming Project or whatever, just said this. Oh no, it wasn't him. But anyway, it was at this recent event, a wonderful swimmer and healer said, the tissues, the issue is in the tissues, is that our body remembers. And this is stress and traumatic stress, that alert system when it goes kablooey, those are very real chemicals going through our body. And then once it's happened, the body remembers it.
Exactly.
And it comes back.
It comes back
again.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and then you think about, like you said, the compounded trauma,
Right.
that this trauma will bring up other things that have
Exactly.
happened to you, and
Exactly.
it all comes back, and then your body remembers all of those other things that you've been through. So the healing process has been very interesting. I took a different approach with this because I have learned over time that it is not okay to continue to just push down and push forward,
Right.
which is unfortunately a thing that is expected in our society,
Right.
especially from people of color who have less power, less of a voice, and less resources. So it's tough.
Right.
It's tough. We are community servants at TOPS 250, and I'm also a community servant in a lot of other areas and a lot of other arenas.
Right.
But just in this particular instance, a lot of people do feel they need to push some of it down and push forward because we serve the community and they're concerned about the community. So please acknowledge and remember our workers and remember those of us who are returning on Friday
Right.
to serve the community on July 15th, only 2 months and 1 day
Right.
after this horrible experience.
Right.
And just be considerate of them. Have some compassion for them. I will not be there. I am not returning on Friday. I will return when I feel physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally that I am ready to do so.
Right.
And I am not there yet.
Right. Right. Well,
But I give much credence to some of my coworkers who have decided to return for whatever reason that they've decided to return. But I know a lot of it is making sure that our community has what they need.
Right, right. Well, it's always, a balance that we need to find, which depends on a lot of things. We just mentioned a number of the factors, right? And so each person, as they figure what they can do, what they want to do, what they're able to do, which depends on that, were they there, or their previous experience with this sort of thing, and just it's a lot, though. I know it's a lot, and I know it's going to be a lot for. It's back to, virtually the whole city had a certain amount of deep, feeling and experience over it.
Yeah.
And yet for some, so this is one of the things that awes me, is that I know how much I felt, and a lot. And yet it's not, and yet it's very far from me. I wouldn't have been a target. I wasn't there. I do, frequent that part of town, but it wasn't close to me in that kind of way. The people who live in the neighborhood, the people, so there are so many different layers of people who are affected. But anyway, certainly the workers are a huge one, and the people who were in the store are a huge one. One of the things we wanted to talk too about is the Compassion Fund, the National Compassion Fund, and some of the monies that have been collected to help people that are victims, that are survivors, that are affected in the deepest ways from the tragedy, from the massacre. And so I just want people to know that there is going to be this town hall meeting that will be on Thursday, July 21st. It's 6 o'clock at City Honors. So people should know that. And if you want to see, so the fund is collected. What is it collected now? It's a few $1 million.
Oh, yes.
Is it like three or
It
four
was
million
like
or something?
3.5, I think it was at.
So there's a lot of money been collected, but there's also a lot of people who have been affected. So one of the things, if you go to nationalcompassion.org, they have a part that's the Buffalo 514 Survivors Fund. They talk about it. They have a place for people to donate. To donate on or offline, and then they have a draft protocol, which tells about what their plan is and how they plan to distribute the funds. They have applications that they want people to have. They have a committee that's looking at everything, trying to make it as fair as possible, and they encourage people to come to that website to read the draft protocol and then to respond either on by email. You can send them your comments, your questions, your thoughts. This isn't fair, or why don't you do this instead, or what does that mean, or whatever questions people have. I can say that the one thing they say for the fund, that it's basically for the 5 different
categories.
Right, the 5. I know you know what they are. You want to tell what they are?
I know it's the families of those who are deceased, those who were physically injured, those who were present in the store, and those who work at the store but were not present. I think there's one other category besides that, right?
Oh, okay. So those who were physically injured by gunshot wound in the shooting, and then those who were suffered some other type of physical injury during the shooting.
Yeah, so
And
both
then it
physically
right,
injured, though.
Both,
So I think I
are-
merged the two
yeah,
categories,
Which
yeah.
you could easily
Yeah.
merge those two categories. And then those who were present and suffered psychological trauma. Well,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, I'm going to say, nobody's in that situation and doesn't suffer some psychological trauma. It may or may not be, how deeply affected or when, too. When and how, and there's a lot of variables.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be in a space like that and not be.
Psychologically traumatized.
Absolutely.
And I think that is one of those other things that they feel they have to justify why those who are present are considered to be survivors, which is sad.
Well, that's crazy.
Yeah, because it's a survivors fund.
Right.
So,
Well,
so you have survivors who survived the massacre, right? That's the people who were present
Right.
and who made it out.
Right.
Whether you were outside when he was shooting out in front,
Right.
or you were inside and he was shooting inside and you
Right.
made it out of the shooting area.
Right.
So those are survivors.
Right. I mean, that's literally.
Then literally, right.
what-
Those are survivors. Then
Right.
there are the survivors of those who did not survive.
Right.
So we're going to include those because they're survivors, but they're not survivors of the massacre.
Right.
They're survivors of those who died as a result of the massacre, right? So they're
Right.
still survivors.
Right.
But it's interesting that they have to say those who were present who suffered psychological trauma, and that's because we weren't physically hurt. So we need some justification as to why we are considered to be survivors, which doesn't really make sense because if you're there and you didn't die, you survived.
Right. And you've got psychological trauma.
Right, but we shouldn't have to say that we
No,
have
you shouldn't
psychological
have to.
trauma. It's just, did you survive?
Right.
Were you there?
Right.
Were you shot at?
Right.
Did you survive?
Right.
Then you're a survivor.
Right.
But because it's not really an accepted thing, excuse me, you can't see my hurt. You can't see the damage that was done to me. So now to justify you including me, you've got to say those who were present and suffered psychological trauma. So that's one of those things that as a survivor who was present, it's interesting to me that has to be stated. And then we're going to include the workers who were not present, even
Right.
though they are technically not survivors at all.
Right.
But they were impacted because this is where we work,
Right.
right? And your life was still changed because you couldn't go to work on Sunday,
Right.
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 And you couldn't go to work because people you work with were shot at.
Right.
People you serviced were killed. People you work with, suffered from this situation. So in some ways, you are surviving now, after the fact. You're surviving the impact of this massacre.
Right.
But to have to justify, it's just that part really kind of tugs with me because I was present, and I guess it's just hard to understand for someone who was not there and who may have not experienced something like this, that I should not have to justify why I'm a survivor when I survived.
Well, can I tell you, I have not experienced anything remotely like that ever, ever, ever. And I have my own trauma. I'm a social worker, so
Right,
believe
right.
me that I've studied and I have my own sense memories and alert system issues and everything else. But there is no question that the people who were there, and the way I look at it, it's like layers are just, it's so hurtful because that level of stress is just like, that rips right through. So, and back to the body remembers it. It doesn't just go away. That the layers of, I think about the people in the neighborhood very much too. Just like because it's back to levels. There's people have different sensitivity levels.
Exactly.
People have different ways of coping or how emotionally affected they get by things. Yes,
Exactly.
that's a variable. But one of the biggest I would have to say the biggest variable is how close you are to the damage done.
Exactly.
Right? So that if for somebody who lost one of their family members,
Right.
can't be
Right.
closer to the damage done.
Right.
To be there, right there is almost no other way, or to be physically closer to the damage done, right? And then if you're working there and you could have been scheduled there, or you're going to be,
Or you were
supposed to be-
scheduled and you called off, or you
Right.
just got off work and you just left the parking lot. Yeah.
So it's this layer. So then the neighborhood people, or the people who shop there. So it does go out in ripples.
It is a ripple.
And it to the whole city of Buffalo.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And, and actually, if and when, for the people who don't really feel very affected, and I hope and I think that there are few,
Right.
but to the extent that there are, I feel like, come on, people, where is, the heart, is that people, sometimes I think people, they think that is strength, or, we,
To just be able to move past it and not really have to deal with it too much because it's distant from you.
I think that we are all connected, and the more we don't feel connected, the more dysfunctional our society is,
Oh, yeah,
and the more we're headed
definitely.
right off the cliff.
Yeah.
So I'm also concerned about the people. If they're not heavily affected by them, I'm also concerned.
Oh, yes,
But-
yes.
But anyway, so I want to tell, actually, I didn't really have this on, but we'll do some more talk about it next week, that you should know that we are planning some healing events and healing opportunities. And I think I mentioned it to you a little
You
bit.
did.
Yeah. So it's going to be August 3rd through the 6th. We have a wonderful Dr. Sabrina Ndaye. She is a social worker, a healer, a psychotherapist who has gone to different massacre and disaster areas, like the Marjorie Stoneman Dunham, the school, the Parkland School, like Las Vegas after their big shootout there, at the massacre there, to the Capitol, the January 6th. So she's worked in a lot of those different spaces, with people and with these layers of trauma that we're talking about, the ripple effect, and with the people most directly impacted by it. So she and a wonderful Dr. Carol Penn, who's an actual MD, who is also a healer and who is also a dancer, who danced with Alvin Ailey.
Okay.
So who's so it's all very much mind body, what we were just talking, and mind body spirit, I would say.
Right.
So and then there's Dina Adler. And so Dina Adler is she actually lives in Rochester, is a therapist, is a family therapist and art therapist.
Okay.
So and we'll have some opportunities for every age group, and for different people differently impacted. So for the first responders, for survivors, for survivors in the way we're just talking about, the people who were there, the people who are the family members of people who were lost, who were murdered,
Right.
and then there'll be one for the communities of faith and intention. So it's sort of a faith-based people who've been working to serve the community and heal, and also to have some honest discussions, and then especially also for some of the Black leaders and healers who have had a lot of weight on them, and I know it's been very heavy on people.
Another heavy thing, though, not to take away from the healing, which is wonderful, but just going back to the idea of the survivors and justifying it. So thinking of justice, I just want to mention, for me, and I'm not sure how many of my constituents would agree or even have thought about the fact that there is no real justice for us. There are no charges related to those of us who were present and had to act to save their lives. And that is one of those other things, and that's why I'm always very careful and very intentional about explaining our status as survivors.
Right.
Because of the need to justify that because we weren't physically injured, we weren't killed, but we still had to act in order to not be killed or to not be physically injured.
Right.
So those things didn't just come to us by divine intervention. We literally had to do something. In my case, I had to run.
Right.
Even though I fell and was knocked over and all these things, I still ran.
Right.
And that running is what saved my life, you know.
Right.
But the fact that someone attempted to kill me,
Right.
it's not, we're not getting any justice for that.
Well,
Like that is something that needs to be acknowledged, that there are no attempted murder charges
right.
for any of the individuals who were present and were not physically hurt. If we were not shot and if we were not killed, there are no attempted murder charges on our behalf.
So have you brought that up to where
Yes,
it
I
can
have.
go to and there's been no response?
I was told to my
What?
face.
Yes.
By those who represent the U.S. government when the Attorney General did come to Buffalo to speak and talk about the criminal complaint, which, by the way, mentions him coming into our job, stalking us, counting how many of us are up front and how many people are in the building and all these things. So you come in, you stalk us, you count
Right,
us,
right.
you plan to kill us, and all of that is in the criminal complaint. However, the charges do not include any of us.
And so when you asked about it, then what was the response? It was Merrick Garland.
I'm not sure the name.
He's a
It was
it
was the victim's advocate who was speaking to me, and another
Okay.
gentleman who also represents the office,
Okay.
the Department of Justice, and also I did speak briefly with the attorneys who will be prosecuting the case, and basically they told me that at this time they wanted to make sure to charge him with some things that they know they can convict him on. So in other words, to paraphrase, it's easier to convict someone for murder because you can clearly
they
see
did it.
that they murdered the
Right,
people.
right.
And then you can clearly convict someone for injuring because they clearly shot people. So they have the counts for those who were killed, and they have counts for discharging the firearm for those who were killed. Then there's for those who were injured, and then discharging the firearm for those who were injured. So there's the attempted murder for those who were injured. There's just nothing. There's no mention, except for in the criminal complaint, to give some color and some context to why we're charging you with a hate crime, because you stalked these people and you looked for these people, you counted them to kill them, so that's why it's a hate crime.
Right.
But unfortunately, even though it's a hate crime and these are the reasons, so I'm included as a reason why
right.
it's a hate crime, but I'm not included in any justice for the hate crime.
I'm back to quoting Cornel West. Justice is what love looks like in public. And I want to tell you, our justice system, we've had plenty of shows on it in different ways and times, and we will continue to. And when we do Camp Peace Prince, starting on July 18th, our theme is justice for all. And we will be talking about what we call the so-called criminal justice system. Sometimes I call it the criminal injustice system, or there's all kinds of ways people call it.
Right.
But I won't make a joke about that, because actually it is sickening that the whole thing, it's all made into a game of like, because they just want to have a 98% conviction charge or
Right,
a
right.
success charge on
Right.
their charges.
So
Which
instead of
is-
charging for everything that the person
instead of
has
doing
done,
what's right,
Right.
I keep
if
saying
you do all these things, you should be charged for all these things.
right, and then if you can't prove this one or that one, actually sometimes it gives you more bargaining room or whatever, or at least it brings out that aspect.
Yeah.
It brings out
And
that
it
aspect.
acknowledges
The
that
acknowledging.
this was done.
Yes,
So-
acknowledging.
Yeah.
Acknowledging.
But for the state of New York, I was told that we are not even considered victims because they're only charging him for murder. So I'm not sure if they're even charging him for the people who were injured for the state's case. And for the U.S. Government Department of Justice case, we are considered victims because, of course, again, we're in your criminal complaint. So
Okay, so you're
we-
considered
we're
for the hate
considered
crime.
victims, but we're
Victim
not.
in the hate crime.
But there's still no charges on our behalf,
Mm-hmm.
even though we're victims. So that's a little confusing in the situation. How do you consider me a victim? So you know I was impacted by this directly
Right.
in order to be a victim, right?
Right.
That means I'm directly impacted by this
Right.
situation. But at the same time, there are no charges on my behalf. So someone did something to me,
Right,
but you're not going to charge them for it. Not right now, I was told.
right. Not
It's
right
to
now,
my
and
face.
why?
Not right now because we're not sure that we can make that stick, but maybe later. And that was supposed to make me feel better. That literally slowed my healing. I was doing okay. I was advocating. I was working. I'm active in the community,
Right.
and I'm helping my coworkers, and I'm doing
Right.
all these things, and I'm
Right.
vocal, and I'm, giving credence to those who are out here supporting and helping and doing. And then at that point, I literally had to just go home.
Right.
I had to go home and go to bed. Because how do you sit with that? When someone tells you to your face, yes, you count enough for us to mention you to help our case,
Right.
but not enough for us to charge them for what they did to you.
Right.
And I said, it would be just as bad if you said he killed 10 people, but we're only going to charge him for 7. Could you do that? And would that be okay? Would anyone accept that? If there were 3 people injured, but you only charged him for 1, would that be okay?
Right. No.
And if that's not okay, then why is it okay for you to recognize and acknowledge me as a victim? And I'm not saying don't acknowledge me as a victim, because I am, but to use me to support what you are charging him for, but you're charging him for what he did to others.
Right.
But using me
Right.
to solidify or to support your case, but you're not going to give me any justice for what was done to me.
Well, back to, because they want to play this little game so their numbers look good.
Yeah.
So that they can say, oh, of all the charges that we get, 98, 99. And actually, one of the things, to me, that just shows what a bogus operation it is.
Right.
Because nobody bats 98%. Actually, when I was working on the Justice Watch in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and the conviction rate was 97%, and the conviction rate in the Soviet Union was 98%. And that was one of the first things of like, you see what's wrong with this picture, and that's back to only charging if you think you can win, not charging, and also not, and it feeds the thing that we could go on about that for a while, about unjust convictions.
Right.
Because they're just about winning.
Yeah.
They're just about winning. Doesn't matter right or wrong. Doesn't matter whether if they have to suppress evidence or if they're going after the wrong person after a certain point. Well, then it's too late because they've already made their charges and they want to make their numbers. So we don't care about justice. We're not really concerned about that. We're concerned about hitting that 97, 98% of we get our charges,
It's a very sad situation.
It is.
It's very sad.
It is.
In the beginning of all of this, I really wasn't focused on any of the politics or anything. like I said, all of that came after the criminal complaint came out because it was just so disturbing.
Right, sure.
That it kind of interrupted what was going on with me. But still, I go forward in
Right.
compassion and in love. I do want to mention the Love Movement, which I will be recording. It's a live recording on July 24th at Tapo Day Club, which is at 140 Chandler Street. And that's just, this is my life of what I've been building anyways. This is prior
Right.
to the shooting.
Right.
I have independently released 5 albums on my record label, Fragrance of Yah Records, LLC. So this is not a result of the shooting. I didn't just start talking about love. I've been talking about love
of course
all this
you-
time.
I know you have.
Right.
Yes, with
But-
us too.
But I
We've had
just want
our
to say
times.
it won't
Yes.
stop me. You know
No,
what I
no,
mean?
of course it
The
won't.
sad part is if we allow something like this, that not just what happened, but even what's happening because of it, and just uncovering the injustices and uncovering how unfair things are, that this was a white supremacist terrorist attack, the domestic terrorist attack, and then on top of it, our own justice system is not giving us justice as a
Right.
result of it, and acknowledging all that, and still, out of all that, I'm going to still continue promoting love.
So,
Which is
so
difficult.
Sunday the 27th.
The
of
24th.
course, the 24th.
Yes.
24th. What am I
That's
saying?
okay.
The 20
Sunday, July 24th from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. at Tapo Day Club, 140 Chandler Street. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And it's going to be a live recording, so I want it to
Wow.
be exciting. Bring your positive energy, your good
Sure.
vibes, your excitement. No negative energy. We dispel all negative energy. We
Right.
dispel all negative thoughts. We dispel all negative vibes. We will have only positivity, love, compassion, and all those things that will lean into our healing and getting us through this, but not pushing it down.
Right.
Not being silent, but getting us through this in love, because we just have to be unified
Right.
on that level, right?
Right. Well, I want to just mention what a beautiful job you did of all of that at Juneteenth.
Oh, thank you.
So at Juneteenth, you're singing, your group, you're sharing, the love movement
Yes.
that you shared
Yeah.
was just so inspiring and beautiful.
Thank
Just
you.
very, very wonderful.
Thank you.
Very, very wonderful. And now, so I think, when we talk about coping, we talked about this mind-body connection. And this is actually, it's back to Cornel West, is always talking about music and philosophy. He said music is like the highest, all the other arts and fields aspire to the strength of music, the potency of music,
Right.
because it will affect us in such a holistic way, more than many things. Not for everybody,
Right,
but for
right.
many,
But for most people,
For most
yeah.
people, music will transport them in a way, And again, some people have different flavors of music that they like
Right,
better
right.
than others or something, but that it's such an expressive and such a powerful modality.
Yes.
And so it really is wonderful, and it's so wonderful hearing you with your family
Right.
and
Yes.
friends,
Yeah.
and friends.
Yes.
And making it happen. And I feel like that it's so inspiring to see you. I'm going to go back to when we had March for Our Lives and you spoke, and I know that the selection of the place was actually by neighborhood people who wanted to do it there. But
Okay.
there was some question, it was questioned afterwards, was it too soon or was it too this or too that? And I know it was hard. There were a lot more white people there than I won't say ever, because there have been quite a few since the massacre. There have been quite a few gatherings where a lot of white people have come in solidarity. But anyway, and this was a thing that was, about remembering victims and survivors, and about gun control.
Right.
So it was part of a national, we had, it was in solidarity with the National Day was picked, you know, by the Parkland students, actually. But anyway, I know that a lot of black people had not been to that site since then. And so a lot of people that I know personally, that was their first time. Actually, Deidre said that. You know, Deidre Emel, who was very busy helping with things to help the community, but hadn't been right on the site
Right.
until then. So for you to get there and come and speak, you know, and Brenda, shout out to Brenda, who,
Yes,
who
yes.
was going to be on this show, but
Yes.
she has a sinus infection. But
She literally gave me a helping hand that day.
right. Well,
Yeah.
we wanted to try to make sure you had everything you needed to
Yeah,
be comfortable
I
to speak.
appreciate that.
And you know, we want to do that. You know, and that's part of what we're trying to do through these healing opportunities too, is to help people, you know, and move our community into the next level in terms of integrity and solidarity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because we have some real challenges, which we've always had.
Right.
But
Right.
they, you know, we're running, you know, back to Dr. King says, there is such a thing as too late.
Yeah.
So we have to do it. We have to.
We have to. This is an opportunity for us
Right.
to really set the stage for how you deal with things of this nature on a community level, on a city level, state level, and even national.
Right.
I'm looking to actually go on tour and not just sing, but also speak about this and what we've been through here
Right.
in Buffalo. But I want to travel the country and just be able to touch other communities, because I know, like you said, these aren't things. The things that have been uncovered by this massacre
Right.
were not things that exist because of the massacre.
Right,
These are
right,
things
right.
that existed before it.
Right.
And things that needed to be addressed.
And still need to be addressed.
And still need to be addressed. And that needs to be more of the focus of what we're doing, and that would be the purpose of traveling and speaking to other communities, is because these things exist in other communities as
Sure,
well.
absolutely.
And we shouldn't have a situation where someone would feel that they could come into a community and
Right.
damage a community on this level, because if these things didn't all exist already, then they wouldn't see that opportunity arise for them to come in and try to exacerbate the damage, right? Because it wouldn't exist. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed on a national level, is just going around to other communities that look like ours and have some of the same issues that we have in our community, and talk about how we can prevent things like this from happening, mostly just by mobilizing the community and activating the community to fix or to work on all of these issues.
You're only making me think of the next show we have coming up, and there's plenty of things. So one of the things we do want to always talk about is how people can help or get more involved.
Right.
So I'd say one thing I would bring right up is, or two things. One is to give to the Compassion Fund, to the 514 Compassion Fund at nationalcompassion.org. And it's right there. It's very easy to find the 514 Fund, and you can donate if you want. You can look and see who's manning or personing, you know, the persons.
Right.
And I know a few of them, some very wonderful people on that committee.
On the steering committee.
Yeah, on the steering committee.
Okay.
It's a tough job, but and things have been slow, and they've been, you know, so there's all of that. So, you know, so this is your opportunity to either email them your question or go to the town hall that they're having on the 21st, 6 o'clock at City Honors, and get some of your questions answered. So that's one thing that people can do, or that's really a few things.
Right.
And the other thing is the whole slew of things around this thing that if you go to WNYPeace.org, Embracing Buffalo, that is going to be this series of healing workshops and conversations that people might want to come and get involved in. that people can go to WNYpeace.org and see some more. And also, more of it is coming up, because we're just planning it now, trying to get it funded now. So it's all very in flux. But that's going to be August 3rd through the 6th. So that's another thing. So what are some other things people can do? They can go to your concert.
They can.
Yes, they can. They can go on the 24th, Sunday the 24th at...
From 2 to 5 at Tapple Day Club. It's 140 Chandler Street.
Right.
Yes, you can come to the concert there. And there are other things you can do. Support TOPS on Jefferson. Be positive towards all of the workers who are coming to work there and trying to move on with their lives. It takes a lot.
Right.
It's a really heavy lift, and that needs to be acknowledged, and it needs to be considered. And then just support our community. We have a lot of community organizations who did receive funding because of this massacre, and just take a look at those lists. They are available online as well. There will be meetings at the library, at the Frank E. Merriweather Library, about all the funding that has come into the city of Buffalo on behalf of the massacre.
Sure.
And we're just hoping that all of this funding really does help the community to move forward. So we have to come up with solutions that are not tearing something down, right? Let's not just think to tear down the TOPS on Jefferson and do this and that. We can still have a memorial. To give all the respect and compassion that we need to give to those who were lost and those who were taken from us, who were stolen from us by this massacre, and to give all respect to their families. And we thank all of them for all of the wonderful love and compassion that they gave to our community when they were living, their legacies that have been left behind, and their families that are continuing to acknowledge those legacies and carry them on. They're carrying the torch. So we appreciate all of that. And we do want to acknowledge that, and we want to talk about what that memorial needs to look at. Make sure that you talk to your elected officials, talk to the Common Council, talk to the city, talk to the mayor about what that should look like. Let's get together, let's be unified in love and in unity and in solidarity about what we want that to look like, and let's just learn to build and not tear down. We have a situation where the African Heritage Co-op is supposed to come in and build a building over on Carlton. So let's support that. Let's, whatever you feel about whoever is doing, but let's support and let's do something in unity and in solidarity, and let's work on making this so that it's not a food desert. Let's talk to Wegmans. Let's talk to Aldi's. Let's talk to Price Right. Let's talk to all these other major chains that we have in the area. Dash's is in the area also. The Lexington Food Co-op. We have so many other things around here. Let's talk to these agencies and these organizations about how we can get this to not happen again. We don't have to have a food desert. Let's talk about some more gardens. Let's talk about fresh vegetables. My desire, honestly, I have Fragrance of Freedom Farms. I have a farm out in Franklinville, which I did with the Legacy Farm Project with the African Heritage Co-op, and they have land out in Franklinville to be able to farm and to grow food so that we can sell it to the grocery stores. I heard from a gentleman at one of the meetings that some of our vegetables it's not the right kind. So let's grow it. Let's learn. We have we have so many things. I know. There's so many things that we can do.
So many things.
So many things. Oh my God.
Well, that is great that there are so many things. So there's lots to do. I do want to say we got this note from Brenda, who is a TOPS employee.
Yes,
for those who don't know.
Yes. She's a manager too.
Yes, she said we're all in this together. TOPS, 250 strong, and Buffalo strong.
Yes.
And I want to say that makes me also think of Jillian Hainsworth, who said, and Buffalo Honest, and she said, come, just like you said too, come here. So be here. When she said to all those, to the, people, how many people have never been to this side of town before?
Exactly.
Right? And so that is
come
where
and see and
come
support
and shop and fill up your gas tank and be part of be a unified, beloved community.
Exactly.
I want to say, Fragrance, I'm so grateful to you always. I can hardly wait to hear you again soon singing. But anyway, it's wonderfully inspiring to hear you talking about your experience and what your efforts and all your love. And we couldn't be more grateful for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I want to say this is Talking Peace, and together we've been talking peace in truth and love.